Hello everyone, and welcome to our online worship on this 14th of November, or 25 Sundays after Pentecost. Even acts of generosity can be done for the wrong reasons, Jesus points out today. I suppose any good act can be done for the wrong reason. And in our passage, Jesus is not fooled by showy acts of generosity. For Jesus, it's not enough to be generous, or helpful for that matter. It's more about learning how to be generous and helpful without strings attached, and that's an entirely different matter. Why we do what we do, why we give what we give, why we help. Is it done for God or other reasons? A lesson from Mark 12. The reading today is from Mark's Gospel, chapter 12. As he taught, Jesus, he said, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses for the sake of appearance, say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation." And he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. And many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth about a penny. And then he called his disciples and he said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." Acts of generosity can be done for the wrong reasons. Actually, any kindness can be done for the wrong reason, any kind of reaching out. And I think that this is one of Jesus' pet peeves. He's not fooled by any kind of show. And in our passage today, we're looking at a particular kind of showing off. It's a showing off of generosity. It's kind of like generosity with strings attached. But when I was thinking about it, it's not just generosity that bothers Jesus, generosity that's done out of wrong motive. It's pretty much anything. It's any action that other people can look onto and be impressed with, but yet we're doing things for the wrong reasons. Because for Jesus, it's not enough to be generous. It's more for him learning how to be generous without any strings attached. Any act of kindness without any strings attached. Reaching out in any way, helping in any way. Again, it's always for Jesus. The teaching is learn how to do this without any strings attached. Remember that line that he has in Matthew, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. It's like you can afford to be quiet about things because God sees what you're doing, or what you're not doing for that matter. And he also says God remembers and God rewards what you do in secret. So today, we're going to be looking at that and this whole idea of why we do what we do. You know, we can spend an awful lot of time in our lives trying to impress people for various reasons. I think it's because, generally speaking, we desire to, most of us get our sense of self-worth and acceptance from others. And we feel that, for many of us, that if we can get others' approval and others' acceptance, then, you know, that will buoy us up and basically we'll feel good about ourselves. Jesus doesn't teach that, however. Overall, that doesn't work too well because you never really know when you've done enough. And if you've ever tried to people please a lot, you know that no sooner have you finished one area where you're people pleasing and then you're on to the next one. Jesus' teaching is quite different. He would say, pleasing God, being true to yourself, is of first importance. The payoff would be other people's acceptance. Don't go for other people's acceptance first, in other words. Be as authentic as possible. Do the best you can do. Do it with the right heart. Whatever you're doing in word and deed, it's your offering to God first and foremost. And then the rest is gravy. So he turns everything around. So here's the context. The context is that Jesus is teaching in the temple courts. And this is the massive, massive temple in Jerusalem, nothing like our churches today. Massive structure. And from his standpoint, where he is, in the particular court he's in, he is watching the religious leaders put large sums of money into the offering. Now, the offering was like 7 massive trumpets. And the idea was, these trumpet-shaped offerings, is that when people flung their shekels in there, it would obviously make a noise. And so he's watching this show, basically, that's going on. It's the religious leaders, they've got their robes on, everyone can see they're the professionals, and apparently they're throwing in large sums of money to the treasury. So they've got this noisy offering, because they've got a lot of money, they can put a lot of money in, they probably tithe, which means they're probably given 10%. Actually did more than tithe in those days. I think they had 3 tithes, but at least one of these tithes, this 10% of all that they have, would be flung in to these trumpets. And obviously they make a noise, and obviously they're giving a lot of money. And because they've got their tassels and their fine robes and all their clergy gear of the day, they're drawing attention to themselves. And Jesus is with his disciples, and he says, okay, pay attention to this. Beware of the scribes. Beware, and the scribes were the ones who would write a religious text. Beware the lawyers. Beware of this. Beware of this. They're showy, no doubt about it. The religious leaders. Don't be fooled by religious leaders just because somebody is a religious leader. That means nothing. They're not honest. They're not honest, Jesus says. Verse 40, they devour widows' houses and make a show of lengthy prayers. So they're very loud in their prayers, and they're very boastful about their spiritual life, which is kind of strange in a way. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense how you could possibly be boastful of how spiritual you are, but it can happen, right? It can happen. And so Jesus is saying, yeah, they make a show. They're showy. They tell everyone they're spiritual. They tell everyone they're religious. They sound very pious. They take advantage of people. Don't trust them. They take advantage of people. They've given into the temptation of using their religious facade, and they're actually they're sort of cloaked under the guise of spirituality, but really they're taking advantage of the vulnerable. That's what they're doing, and so don't trust them. It reminded me of that text where Jesus said that he entrusted his heart to no one because he knew what people's hearts were like. People can be very devious. People can be not what they appear to be. And one of the worst kinds of deviousness, as far as Jesus is concerned, is one that's cloaked in piety and some sort of spiritual, guise and tradition. Yeah, common temptation, using people to get money. Beware of the scribes, he says. Beware of this. Very easy to succumb to this sort of temptation. Easy to help or give or do anything really out of self-interest. Lots and lots of strings attached. These particular scribes wanted to be well thought of. They wanted to be admired. Now the contrast is the next person who throws her money into the trumpets is only 2 copper coins. It's the widow. She's poor. She has 2 copper coins. She's got a couple dollars, say. Obviously, that's not going to impress anyone. Obviously, nobody's going to hear her offering going in, and nobody's going to be paying attention to her. And Jesus said, this woman has put in more than all the rest of them. Because everyone else contributed out of their abundance. They had plenty, they gave plenty, and they did it with their own heart. The widow puts in a couple dollars, a couple coins, but this one, God sees and honors and notices. There's something about her that is very, very different from the religious leaders. For one thing, she's not doing it for recognition. She's not doing it. That's not going to, nobody's going to be impressed with her giving. But interestingly enough, Jesus is saying God's impressed because God sees her heart. So it's really nothing to do with the amount, is it? It's why we do what we do. She knows that $2 isn't going to impress anyone. She knows that 2 pennies, 2 copper coins isn't going to change much, but she gives it anyway. And Jesus sees that and says, this is the one. Now, she's giving without any strings. There's nothing in it for her. She's just giving it. I think that there's many ways to read this text. I don't think the text is saying, give away everything you have like the widow and God will take care of you. I don't think it's saying that. I don't think we would do that anyway. So I don't think that's the point. I think one of the points is certainly she's giving without any expectation, or she's not expecting to be admired. She's not expecting to get a pat on the back. She's not expecting other people to say, wow, that's really great. Look at you. I mean, this is a very private thing between her and God. She gives what she can without any show, without trying to impress people. So there's that. There's certainly something about her that caught Jesus' attention because he lifts her up as an example. It could be her humility. She just quietly goes about doing what she thinks needs to be doing. It could be he lifts her up because of her total dependency on God. I mean, she was dependent on God when she came into that temple. She had nothing but 2 copper coins. When she leaves, she doesn't even have that. So she's also, it could be he lifts her up as an example of absolute dependency. But she gives, she gives. There is an act of generosity on her part. And it just struck me this time. I think it struck me during this last year and a half, all of our COVID, keeping to ourselves. I think that over this last year and a half, many of us have withdrawn and isolated into our little family units, which is quite understandable. We've sort of gone into survival mode. And, when that happened, of course, what can happen to us is that we turn inward. And there's not much outreach of any kind happening because we're just really concerned about ourselves and our loved ones around us. And we can isolate. And we can get into this survival mode. And we can really forget about any acts of generosity of any kind. Never mind giving money, but giving anything. Giving time, giving help, giving a listening ear, a phone call. I mean, I just wonder if we'll look back on this couple years and see how it's affected us as a society here in North America, certainly, of just withdrawing completely. I've noticed that as I watch on. And now more than ever, I think giving matters. I think giving matters. I think reaching out really matters at this time because of this isolation that we have put ourselves in for protection and for good reasons. But, I think there's something there. For God, giving has always mattered at every single level. Not just money. Of course, money is important, but you might be helping a friend in need, you might be helping a family member, you might be giving money to your church, you might be giving money to a cause that you think is worthwhile and making a good change in the world, bringing healing into the world. Any kind of outreach is an offering to God. Any kind of good healing outreach can be used as an offering to God. I mean, it speaks about this a lot in the Old Testament. It's like God saying, I'm not interested in all your fancy prayers, I'm not interested in that kind of sacrifice. What I'm interested in is a pure heart and the motive and the things that come from that. Yes, giving has always been important to God, and what happens with people is that we can end up giving for the wrong reasons. We end up giving to get people's praise or approval, and the trouble with that is that it's never ever quite enough. Guilt's another reason that people give, and it's really not that helpful at all in the long run. Giving in any way because you feel guilty? Nah. Not the best motive, Jesus would say. Not the best motives. Of course, people have a desire to be noticed and affirmed. Of course we do. Of course we like praise. We like appreciation. Of course we do. But again, Jesus points out, if you're truly giving to God, if you can get into the mindset of what you do in action, word, and deed, ultimately, first and foremost, it's your offering to God, then at some level, it doesn't really matter quite as much whether people recognize you or affirm you. It's nice that they do, it's great that they do, but that's really not why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. In other words, your eye is first and foremost on, I want to be faithful. I want to be a faithful follower, first and foremost. And then, if people get it, and if they understand it, and if they appreciate it, that's great, and it's wonderful. But my first desire is to please God. I mean, then kind of frees us up a bit from, no need to feel underappreciated or ignored, because you know that you're not being ignored. You might be getting ignored by people. You might be getting ignored by your family or those closest to you that you think, I wish they'd pay more attention. But Jesus would say, well, here's the thing. Maybe people aren't paying much attention to what you're doing, but God sees what you do in secret. God sees. And it's interesting that, remember, he's giving this first teaching to his disciples, to James and John, who have a great need to be recognized. Remember, these are the guys that have a particular need. They want to be affirmed and recognized and in a place of honor. And I've said before, I think that there's James and John in all of us. I don't think it's just James and John that want recognition. Noticed and appreciated. It's really, everyone needs that. Everyone needs that. It's just how we go about getting it, right? Some of us were raised in families where our best was never enough. And never in your whole life did you have someone say to you, you have done a fantastic job, thank you for that. Or some people have entered into marriages and stayed in long-term relationships where decades ago, your spouse, your partner, it was decades ago, the last time where someone said to you, I really appreciate all you do. Thank you for that. Thank you for this meal, or thank you for keeping our household together. Thank you for keeping our kids together, or whatever, right? Yes, years and years of that, you can start to feel underappreciated if you're working solely for people. Jesus would say, you're not working solely for people. That's your offering to God. And God sees what you do in secret. Some of you are in a job where you can't remember the last time your boss said you do a great job, because maybe your boss has never ever said that, right? Maybe you have one of these horrible work situations where you just don't have a good boss. They don't care. That's a common thing. God sees the work that you do. Jesus says, whatever you do in secret, whatever you do, God sees that. And God will reward you, which is interesting. That's a whole other topic, mind you, because you think, well, what's the reward, you know? I wonder if part of the reward is that we become less dependent on people's praise, which means we get more freed up on the inside. Yeah, maybe that's part of the reward. We get free from the tyranny of trying to get other people's approval. And we get a sense of being at peace with ourselves, as well as, of course, being at peace with God. It's like Jesus would say, you've got God's stamp of approval. All the rest is just gravy. You have the Creator's stamp of approval. God sees your efforts. God sees what you're doing. God sees that you're trying. God sees all the ways that you're trying to help. That's enough. That's enough. It reminded me of that old song. You remember that old song, In My Life, Lord, Be Glorified? In my work, in my family, in my church, it's like everything I do, I do for you first. My life is an offering. I think that's what that widow is. I think she's an example of that. Her life is her offering. It's not about the 2 coins. It's about who she is as a person and her openness to God. So there's the prayer. There's the heart cry. God, yes, let my whole life to you, in good times, in bad times, in plenty, in want, when I'm contented, when I'm not contented, all of it. Let all of me be an offering to you. Amen.
The storms arise and fear fills your mind. Nothing seems familiar.